A.C.O.R.N.'s Operation Crackdown is an animated film produced by Vanguard Animation, a production company known for things such as Happily Never After and Space Chimps. The actual animation was handled by a Canadian company called Awesome Town Entertainment. After getting one look at the trailer, I knew I had to take a look at it. The uncanny valley, the generic premise, the exploding poop.
I wish my poop blew up.
Honestly, from the trailer, it looked like some sort of cheap cash-in, even if the movie itself has more budget and more effort than one might expect from that type of movie. We open with a stylized 2D animated segment to introduce the film. The animation isn't super good, but it's also not standout awful. The animation isn't always that smooth, but the color palette and designs are nice. It certainly looks better than the 3D animation. The film proper opens in what is called a rescue zoo, which is what appears to be the animal equivalent for jail in this universe. And here we see this movie's biggest problem, the uncanny valley. This movie's main character just looks wrong. The kicker is that the other animals don't look nearly as bad as Frankie. The squirrels by far got the worst character designs out of all of them. Frankie's face is immediately contrasted by the hawk's face. While the hawk doesn't look amazing, he at least looks like a hawk and not an example of what would happen if humans and squirrels could crossbreed. Frankie returns home from jail and he starts to rekindle old relationships. I think I made that sound more interesting than it actually is. Somehow, Frankie's girlfriend, Lola, is designed worse than Frankie himself. While many parts of this movie feel off, Lola is by far the worst designed character just hands down. Like, holy fucking shit, what the hell? First, she looks like a human squirrel crossbreed like Frankie, but even then her design manages to be even worse. When you combine how her makeup looks, the distractingly massive eyes, the thin lips, the puny nose, and the strange forehead, it doesn't really come together into much that's all that appealing. Plus, while the top of her head looks more squirrel-like, particularly the nose and the ears, the bottom half of her face is very human. That is a contrast to Frankie's face because while he does look uncannily human, his face retains more squirrel features than Lola. These squirrels' bodies also look off. They are essentially human bodies and, well, Lola got the worst of it in terms of uncanny anatomy. Gotta make sure the squirrel girl's got squirrel titties. Like, yeah, that's not the only problem of her design by far, but I swear when it comes to designing female characters, some designers can't seem to resist slapping a pair of tits on things that should not have tits. You know the pizza's a girl because it got boob jiggle. Imagine animating that. Anyway, back on track. Her design is essentially the stereotypical girlfriend character. You know, conventionally attractive, stereotypically feminine, stuff like that. But she's also a squirrel. This stereotypical girlfriend trait also carries over into the writing, and, well, we'll talk about that later. While anthropomorphized animals can be put to good effect, ultimately the squirrels here just fall straight into the uncanny valley. There is also something off with the textures. Not just the squirrels either. The owls look like they're made of plastic, for example. A lot of this movie feels off in a way that I can't really put into words. It doesn't look god-awful, but it looks wrong. Now back to Lola and how she's a horribly written character. She's Frankie's love interest, and that's about it. While there is a bit about her being a singer and going on tour, and a bit about her being a flying squirrel, those are very much a small part of her already small presence. Aside from those two small aspects of her, she is defined solely by her relationship to Frankie. Look, I'm not against romance or anything, but I am sick and tired of this type of romance archetype in cartoons, where a love interest is set up seemingly because the movie thinks that the male character needs to get with a lady type or something, despite the movie often giving no development to the actual romance. Because Lord knows we have an animated movie without a forced love interest. Most of her relationship with Frankie is established via expository dialogue as opposed to, actually showing their relationship. She's a generic love interest with almost no personality of her own. She's even worse than the rest of the characters in this movie. The other characters, while not written spectacularly, at least have their own identity. Anyway, back to the main plot. Frankie meets up with his friend Cody. Cody is basically the annoying comic relief. Thankfully, while nothing he says is actually funny, he is not as hard to watch as he, could have been. What can I say? I have seen some annoying characters in my time. Now we're getting into the setup for the main plot. Basically, a corporation has taken all the acorns from the forest and is planning on grinding them up into cosmetics.
Humans are turning our food into butt cream?
Apparently it's very firming.
Get it? Because butts! Because of the impending threat of mass starvation, Frankie decides to try and steal the acorns back from the corporation. This movie can be split up into 4 parts. First is the setup, which is where it, sets up the rest of the movie. It introduces its plot, and it briefly introduces some of its characters. It presents the basic conflict, which serves as a basis for the rest of the movie. Basically, it's the stuff you need to know before the rest of the movie begins. The second part is the planning of the heist, where the characters figure out how to steal back the acorns, and they start getting all their pieces into place. The third part is the heist, which, as you can guess, is where the heist happens. The plan is executed, and everyone deals with the complications as they come along. The final part is the conclusion, which is a 2 to 3 minute wrap-up at the end of the movie. As you might imagine, this movie is built around the second and third parts, so let's actually talk about them. First, Frankie meets with Mr. Bellwood, the man who would fund the operation, and his mute butler, Oscar. Frankie then begins gathering accomplices for the heist. First is a snake called Rach.
How'd you meet this gal again?
She ate my neighbors when I was growing up. They were mice, they had it coming.
It's funny, cause she killed people. Anyway, back to Rach, who has a design I actually kinda like. Primarily because she doesn't feel like an uncanny mix between a snake and a human. She is still rather anthropomorphized. After all, snakes don't tend to have piercings, glasses, a fishnet stocking, or lipstick, but she still feels more snake-like instead of a weird mix like those furred humans that this movie calls squirrels. The balance of human and animal traits in anthropomorphized characters can be a difficult balancing act, but Rachel's design handles this balance far better than any of the other characters. At the very least, she's not a snake with boobs. I know that doesn't sound like much, but given that I've seen squirrel with boobs, bread with boobs, and a fucking pizza slice with boobs, yeah, I'm just glad they didn't go that direction with Rach. Although even a character with a design I like can only look so good in a movie like this. Rach is actually in general a character I rather like. I hesitate to call her a good character because she is still limited by the constraints of the script, but she is more interesting than the other characters in this movie, even if the jokes about her eating people do get old after a while. She remained a presence that was at the very least interesting, and she actually had one of the few funny jokes in the movie. Next, we meet a bat named Flyboy. His main thing is that his poop explodes.
I wish my poop blew up.
Something about radiation. Radiation, the explosive fiber. Flyboy's design is not very good. His face doesn't look human like some Dr. Moreau bullshit, but it still feels uncanny in a different way. Also, his voice acting is rather annoying.
Yeah, yo, Frankie! Hey, Cody! Hey!
I can't really say that he has the worst voice acting in the movie, but it's close. Next, we meet a frog named Edsy, who initially doesn't want to join the heist because of his kids, but is then guilt-tripped into joining the heist because of all the massive debt that's going to occur in the forest if the heist doesn't go through. You know, standard stuff. And they meet with some pangolins.
What are pangolins?
Chinese diggers.
Chinese? How'd they end up here?
The question is, can they dig?
Deep doubts, deep wisdom.
Because why create interesting characters when you could just rely on national stereotypes? There are 2 pangolins, an old man and his small daughter. They are here to dig like an anime echidna. Next, we take a break from the setup in order for Frankie to talk to Lola.
You know, there's nothing in this whole forest that could ever keep me away from you, kiddo.
Smooth. Would have gone down even smoother if the last words you said before standing me up 2 months, a couple of weeks, 3/4 of a day, and a few hours ago weren't, "I'll see you tonight, I promise."
Lola.
Yeah, that wasn't fair. I'm sorry, I've just been so scared.
I'm sorry for holding you accountable for your actions and mistakes. As mentioned before, Lola is pretty much defined solely by her relationship with Frankie. Almost everything she does is because of Frankie. Granted, she doesn't do much in general, but my point still stands.
Lola, it's not what you think.
Oh, so it doesn't involve you and Cody risking your lives for some big score.
Okay, it may be what you think, but it's different than the other jobs.
If I had an acorn for every time I heard that one.
Their conversation goes like you'd expect. Gotta make sure that this romance is as predictable as possible. After that, we see the crew's first meetup. And we meet our final crew member, a parkour mouse named Liam.
Just waiting on Liam, but he'll show himself in, I'm sure.
Already am, mon capitaine.
He's French, in case you couldn't tell.
In addition to having a fully collapsible skeleton, he instills an irrational fear in humans.
Disgusting vile beasts.
Yeah, Liam is probably the character I would award the honor of having the worst voice acting out of all of them. And the thing is, the voice acting of this movie is actually pretty good. While there are some duds, most of the characters were voiced finely. The voice acting is by far the best part of this movie. Hell, in my opinion, Lola's singing is fantastic.
You make me feel like there's no other till your friends come out to play. And then there's waiting for another day. Waiting for another day. Waiting for another day.
While I hesitate to call it like super amazing, ultra magnificent voice acting, it's far more bearable than the animation, the character designs, or the environment. The gang begins planning their heist, and the music is very unfitting for this type of scene.
The A.C.O.R.N.S processing plant. Now, as you all know, a week and a half ago, the creepy lady A.C.O.R.N and the Beret sent her army right through our front yard and made off with our acorns.
It sounds like the type of music you would hear when someone was trying to sell you something. And here we have a taxidermy squirrel. When Frankie was briefing the gang about how the A.C.O.R.N Corporation had taken all the acorns, we see some random squirrels who somehow look worse than Frankie and Lola. Also, this one has a bow, so you know she's a girl. So I take it the other squirrel is her mother, and her father is probably some guy who felt like fucking a squirrel. During the heist planning sessions, we see the plan illustrated in 2D animation. Like the intro, the animation isn't really all that great, but even so, it looks so much better than the 3D animation, so whenever it pops up, it's a breath of fresh air. Frankie continues planning the heist. Primarily, him and his cohorts are trying to deal with all the traps that the A.C.O.R.N Corporation has set up. One of those traps is an underground sonar system that acts like a dog whistle, but for forest animals. And pangolins, apparently. In addition to that, there's also an advanced security system, a pest control company, what appears to be a private army, and Frankie's nemesis, Hawk.
I did time with this guy. There is no way Liam makes it to the front door with that psycho in the sky.
So we take him out now?
And risk a replacement being brought in? No way. We can't take him out until go time.
Sounds like a job for a glider.
Hey, Lola's a glider. Why don't you just ask her?
No.
Yeah, why not ask her?
Look, that Hawk is a rodent-eating machine. If we put Lola up against him and she gets hurt or worse, I won't be able to live with that.
Glad to know that all your other friends are disposable. Okay, look, I'm not trying to dismiss the desire to protect those you are romantically close to, but Lola is such a one-dimensional character that any potential emotion that this movie is trying to elicit with her and Frankie's relationship feels hollow. It feels like this movie is following a checklist about how to write the main character's girlfriend in as much of a cliche way as possible. Plus, it doesn't help that Frankie's overprotectiveness never really feels justified. Also, wouldn't Lola have a personal investment in this heist beyond Frankie?
Winter will be here in a matter of weeks. If we don't get those acorns out of there, half the animals in our forest won't live to see spring again.
Oh, he just laid down the stakes.
After all, if what Frankie said is true, doesn't that indicate that pulling off this heist means preventing the deaths of some of Lola's friends? While later in this movie, we learn that Lola is about to go on tour, so she may be able to escape the harsh winter herself, but, well, she lives here, so there should still be some friends of hers in the forest, right? Oh wait, I forgot, she doesn't have any friends because she's defined solely by Frankie. Cody begins training so that he can use his quills like an arrow so he can shoot down the Hawk. Shot through the heart. The gang in general is also training for their role in the heist. And here we get to one of the few times where this movie slows down. And Frankie just takes a bath in front of everyone else. Not to judge, but that's more than a little weird. I mean, not as weird as Frankie's dream, but it still feels odd. Still less creepy looking than Lola's face in general. Frankie and company end up stealing a giant robot from a hobby shop run by two people who keep arguing about sandwiches.
The taco.
Not sandwich.
Wrong. Sandwich.
Beep bop beep boop, a big whoopity doop. I don't care what you do, as long as you do it with me.
Lola, you might want to get some better songwriters. Like you're a fine singer, but don't ever sing lyrics like that again. Anyway, Lola's approached by Mr. B, and she's inducted into the heist as a way to deal with the Hawk.
This is why he didn't ask me to stay. He was protecting me. He does love me.
Well, given that the Hawk has yet to be proven to be a very intimidating villain, Frankie's overprotective actions feel more condescending than anything. Like, it feels like Frankie is constantly underestimating Lola's abilities. It doesn't help that Frankie constantly calls Lola kiddo.
Kiddo.
This maybe could have worked in a better movie where the love interest is an actual goddamn character and the nemesis is actually threatening, but as it stands, it does not feel like a man trying to protect someone he loves, but rather it feels like someone who is greatly overestimating how dangerous his nemesis is. Especially because Lola saves Liam from the Hawk later. Although to be fair to Frankie, the movie immediately undercuts this moment by quickly turning her into a damsel in distress. So, in some weird way, it feels like both Frankie and the movie itself undervalue Lola more than they should. Especially with the few bits of character we get of Lola that is divorced of Frankie. Like, it's not much. Like, it literally just sets up one scene before she's kidnapped. So is Frankie condescending her, or did the movie just undermine Lola's character even further by pushing some girlfriend cliches on her? Or is it both? My mind's on both. Okay, I've been talking about this one point for far longer than I expected to, so let's just move on. Now we are getting to the third part of the movie, the heist itself. We start with Liam parkouring through the parking lot while the Hawk goes after him. After a while, Cody finally manages to nail the Hawk. The Hawk gets up super quickly and Flyboy gets stuck. As mentioned before, Lola ends up being the one to save Liam. That music riff right there is actually a nice touch. It's a reuse of the melody for one of Lola's songs. And that reuse actually fits rather well with the scene. Especially because, you know, it's supposed to be the theme for Lola, essentially. Also, her suit isn't poorly designed either, even if her character design is still way too uncanny. If this were a better movie, this moment would actually have been a rather nice one. Not only is Lola a bland as fuck character, but this moment is ruined even further by Lola becoming a damsel in distress only a few minutes later. Liam then manages to get inside the building. He then outruns one of the guards, but not before she ate the camera. Rach and Frankie use the robot that they stole to pose as the exterminator that they trapped in a hole. The heist continues, and after some setbacks, Edzzy opens the door to the cooling room, Liam takes out the security, and Flyboy blasts a hole in the roof and a hole underneath the van.
I wish my poop blew up.
The acorns are vacuumed outside and through the hole in the van. The entire crew escapes except for Frankie, who has to rescue his girlfriend. During this, Rach is on the run from the company's private police cars, which they have for some fucking reason. We might as well be the government! Like, who the hell are they expecting to try and steal acorns from them? This scene actually has one of the few jokes I thought was genuinely funny as well. Like, the only laugh I got out of the entire movie.
Come out with your hands where we can see them. I repeat, come out with your hands.
I'm sorry, friend, but one of us is going down for this, and since I'm still being blamed for the whole fall from paradise thing, I'm afraid it's you this time.
They are going after the exterminator van because they think that it's housing the acorns, when in reality the acorns as well as every crew member except Rach went through a tunnel that was blasted open when blowing a hole in the roof. It's subtle enough to miss, but it's honestly a nice touch. It doesn't save this movie by any stretch of the imagination, but the heist is surprisingly well done. The rest of the movie is subpar, but the heist is easy to follow and the plan makes some degree of sense. It's not like the greatest heist or anything, but it's honestly the best part of the movie. Frankie is now facing off with the Hawk.
Welcome, punch!
Frankie's plan is him trying to trick the Hawk into taking out the giant acorn tower, which totally doesn't seem like a recipe to get Lola squished. Thankfully, Lola manages to get free and she punches the Hawk again before he almost gets crushed by the creepy acorn lady. This doesn't negate her damsel in distress status though, if just because of how easily she was kidnapped. But hey, at least the movie gave her some semblance of agency, even if it's barely anything. Frankie and Lola fly out of the factory, and we head into the conclusion where the gang is having a party to celebrate their heist.
Okay, I've been thinking about taking a little trip ski down to the South Pole, and I was wondering...
For the last time, we are pangolins, not penguins.
You racist fuck! Here, Frankie and Lola finally consummate their relationship. Also, are we just going to forget about Lola's tour? We are? Okay. Glad to see that this movie cares so much about this character. This is a bad movie, no doubt about that. But the unique thing about this movie is that it's surprisingly watchable. It's not so bad it's good, but it's also not an excruciating watch. It's not a movie without merit, but it is without a doubt a movie with flaws out its ass. The uncanny valley, the unfunny jokes, the bland characters, the voice acting of Liam, how Lola was treated in general. But despite all of that, there are parts of this movie which I surprisingly liked. I liked one character design and I liked one joke. The music Lola sings is well done, and the voice acting aside from two characters is actually kinda good. Plus, as mentioned before, the heist is well put together. It's a bad movie, but it is also a movie that could have ended up so much worse. Which may not be a compliment, but it's why I can't wholeheartedly condemn this movie either. It's not infuriating, it's not annoying, it's not gross, and the jokes don't hurt, they're just unfunny. So what I guess I'm trying to say is that while this is a very bad movie, at least it wasn't as bad as Breadwinners.
I wish my poop blew up.